Hey, you guys. Hey, everyone. Can you believe it? It's May. It's gotta be May. Your cosmic fairies again here for the first part of May. Yeah, I hope you had a very, how can I say this, flowy and imaginative April. I mean, it was a doozy. It was a doozy for me personally. How was it for you, Karina?
Yeah, a doozy for sure, for sure. I am transiting my sixth house to my seventh house. And so I'm trying to understand this from being inside and by myself and understanding myself to finally being like, all right, we're ready to share, but are we really? Because we have a retrograde coming up, which we're about to share with you. But
Mm.
I definitely feel that doozy energy, especially today. So, as we're recording, it's April 26th. We have 5 planets if we're counting Juno in Pisces. We have Juno, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune. It's a Pisces party.
It is, but we're shifting. We're shifting from all of this water. We're actually shifting to Aries, fire. So if you can allow yourself just a couple of seconds to really feel into this transition of like, what does it feel coming from water? And then all of a sudden, we're getting this fiery, hot energy. So that's where most of the planets are moving for me. We also are in the eclipse season. So the next 30-35 days will feel like, quantum leaps of change. Because that's what eclipse is, right? Eclipses are windows and portals to just quantum leaps and change. We also have Pluto stationing retrograde by the end of this month in Capricorn. So definitely we're going to talk more about that. And we also have Mercury second retrograde in Gemini and then in Taurus in the same month. So it's going to retrograde in air, Gemini communication, and it's going to retrograde back to Taurus Earth. So if that's any indication, all this movement from water to fire and then air to earth and then like just flowing in between already signals a changeable dynamic month. So we're quite excited to go through the rest of the month with you, but probably just a little more synapses. We're actually getting 2 new moons in May. The first new moon is a solar eclipse. It's a partial solar eclipse. We get a lunar eclipse on the 16th, and then we get another new moon or a black moon by May 30. So with that, passing it on to Karina for our day by day.
Thank you. Some of the most interesting months are months when we have 2 new moons that month. So I'm interested to see the dynamic we're going to go with through this, especially considering all the earth, fire, wind, air, but it feels like wind. So, I mean, I can only imagine what's going to happen when Gemini season comes around, but let's just ease into Taurus for now. So we'll start with the first. May 1st, we have the new moon in Taurus. It's at 10 degrees and 27 minutes at 4:27 a.m. exact Philippine time. So a good statement, I feel like, to sum this up is, can you muster up the courage to own your worth? And the reason I say courage is when we talk about any of the square that Taurus makes. So Taurus makes a square to Aquarius and to Scorpio and is opposite Leo. So if we're talking about any of these 4 signs, one of the biggest things is courage, right? But then when we're talking about it with Taurus, it's, can you own your worth? Like, what are you worth? Do you know what you're worth? Do you know what your values are? And then some of the words that come up to mind when I think about Taurus are like beauty, love, nature, dessert, um, sweetness, currency, yummy, grounded. Taurus is grounded energy, but it's fascinating because this is a solar eclipse. So it's really fast moving energy. I don't know if we can still call it grounded. Thea, after I explain this, I'm going to come back to you to ask you how you feel about the first. But this also brings the need to remember that we are nature and nature is us. It's an invitation to come back to this natural energy, to natural medicine, to remembering that we are part of the earth. And it really feels arrogant to think that we're separate from the earth, isn't it? Because this is a human spacesuit, and everything that allows us to survive on a daily basis are things that we get and eat and consume from the earth. And so how dare we think we're anything but the earth? And I think as the North Node moves through Taurus, we're going to see this more and more and more. And we're going to have to muster up the courage by the end of this to accept that we are part of the earth. But, you know, with the gifts of technology, so many humans think we're superhuman these days. So I wonder how it's going to turn out. And then it's also about coming back to our senses. And then on the same day, we have Venus conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. So adding up to the expansive, adding up to the quick moving Taurus solar eclipse energy, we have this expansive, big, magical, floaty energy. And I feel like it's the ability to dream up what we want to create and how we want to be. And it's a great day to give ourselves space to just dream, right? Because eclipses aren't really a time to practice any rituals, but they are a time to kind of witness and be with yourself and see how you're handling this propelling forward, that like the universe is just throwing us forward to. And I feel like this day is a great day to remember to surround ourselves with people that remind us to follow our joy. Because it's funny, you know, I came across someone the other day. We were having a conversation about life, and she was like, you know, at the end of the day, are you happy? And how many people do that, right? How many people are actually like, okay, you're telling me all this, but are you happy? And if you're happy, that's all that matters. So this is a good day to remember that, come back to that, ask yourself, are you happy with Venus in Pisces, and Jupiter in Pisces? It's like an amplification of, do you feel separate or do you feel one with the universe? And then lastly, on this day, we also have Venus sextile Pluto retrograde. And Venus is in Pisces. Pluto retrograde is in Capricorn. This is towards the end degrees of Capricorn, so the end degrees of Pisces as well. And to me, this is one last look with this Venus placement at how our boundless nature is being restricted by old stories that we've been sticking to. And it's just a time. I thought of that Trevor Hall song. I think it's called Old Story. And he's like, oh, no, no, no. You just got to let that old story go. So listen to that song and remember to just let the old story go. Pluto in retrograde, I feel like, has us reevaluating all the beliefs and ideas that we have been asked to shed. We're getting tested. Things are coming our way to see if we're going to stay a butterfly or if we're going to somehow regress into being a caterpillar. I mean, yes, there is beauty in being a caterpillar, but then we went through a metamorphosis for a reason, right? And so how can we move forward, create new beliefs, new ideas, new thoughts, and not wait for permission, but instead just begin? For today, my practical tip is observe. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be you on planet Earth? And I think because it's a Taurus new moon, it's a great time to use music as our guide. How do you feel about the first?
Amazing. Perfect. Like everything perfect. As usual, to take it a notch deeper. So this new moon is conjunct Uranus, and we like how I really work with Uranus is I don't, because usually when we try to predict Uranus, the planet of disruption and unpredictability and genius and insight and lightning, oftentimes it's ego. It's an ego trip of like, hey, this is how I actually have to work with Uranus. So definitely, like what Karina said, just try to be open, especially since this is a North Node eclipse, a North Node partial solar eclipse. Dane Rudier thought about this, that if it's a North Node solar eclipse, it's more about receiving and assimilating. There is no action that is needing to be done here, but it's observing, it's measuring, it's going within and understanding how the shadow and light are playing its way. And since it's in Taurus and the ruler of Taurus is Venus, And Venus is conjunct Jupiter. This is like your two benefics in Pisces, the sign of compassion, creativity, visioning, imagination. The root of imagination is magic. And so, like Karina said, if you can align with what brings you happiness, if you can align with, um, imagination and creative visioning towards things. So North Node eclipses are actually collective goals, which we as a collective should be moving towards. If we can align and creatively envision what we want to work towards as a society, and of course individually, that is an amazing, amazing opportunity, and an amazing time to work with this energy. And also, since we have Uranus and Taurus, and we still have Pluto and Capricorn, and Pluto is going retrograde. These earth signs have a lot to do with our bodies and our posture. It's our conditioning. And we have a perfect revolutionizing time to really go within and be like, what are the condition structures that I still allow myself to play in, even though it's way past its time? And there's so many, many, many different layers and ways that we can spin at this individually. We know we kind of don't like what we're seeing in the world stage. What can we do? This is it. The earth signs with Uranus there and Pluto there. This is like a continuous metamorphosis. And yes, we become a butterfly, but I mean, it's always linear. So another reflection here is, can you look back to like early 2003, 2004? What was happening to you then in areas that rule security, health, your body, your purpose, your values? What similar themes are coming up now? Because obviously all these disruptions and all these transformation are happening, so that there is a bigger evolutionary theme that we're being asked to remember, so we can realign and reconnect with our true nature. And of course, that goes without saying that our nature is aligned with Pachamama, because I mean, we are all one, right? Yeah, you wanna anything else that you wanna add before we move to the third?
Yeah, I pulled cards for the solar eclipse. Of course, as you were talking and saying, it's about like envisioning the future that we want to kind of create and be, judgment, shala. And so it's literally like coming out of this conditioning, coming out of what we thought we were, noticing that we're just so much more. And when we're out of like this limiting space that we put ourselves in, we're able to stretch and dance and like, oh, come on, she's like doing ballet outside her body. So how can you allow yourself to do that? And at the same time, as you're witnessing and envisioning and being, continue doing what you've been doing, continue working on what you've been working on. And I say this because of this card. It's continue working in community, because you're creating something, and the Pentacles is earth. It corresponds to earth. And so it's as you're observing, as you're witnessing, as you're knowing, okay, maybe for a little while I need to regress into a caterpillar to become a more beautiful butterfly. How can you still keep working instead of saying, okay, to go back, I have to stop what I'm doing before I can go forward? You know, oftentimes we put that on ourselves. We're like, no, I gotta stop here because I can't go and reevaluate my life while still doing all these new things that I've learned. But actually, that's what allows integration, right? That's what allows it to come together. Yeah, that's all I have to share for the first. Let's move into the third. We have Venus entering Aries at 12:11 a.m. So now we just have 3 planets in Aries, but if we're counting Juno, we have 4 planets in Aries. And it's still like we're still feeling empathy towards every living being, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. But I feel Venus and Aries brings such a beautiful coming together of opposites. Because Aries is ruled by Mars and Venus is Venus, and Mars is one of Venus's many lovers, right? And so it's a mirroring of masculine strength and vigor and feminine grace and worthiness. It's coming back to working with the relationship we have with ourselves, before working with a relationship with anybody else, because Aries is the sign of the self. But then if you know where Aries is in your chart, you know exactly what Venus is working on in your chart. So as you're watching this, we'd like to urge you, pull out your chart. You can get a free copy anywhere online. Pull it out, print it out, so that you're able to circle these little planets and just understand what's going on for you a little bit more. But to me, this Venus entering Aries at its highest expression is a remembrance of how much light we radiate to those around us, especially when we're honoring our true self and standing in our decisions because we know it's for the common good of all those involved. But this decisive energy could go wrong with impulsive behavior, I feel like, because it's Aries, it's bursts, it's a temper. And so make sure you think things through before you fire away, especially when it comes to relationships, because Venus relationships. Practical tip for today is make a list of all the things that you're good at. Next, write down all the things that you love about yourself. Lastly, put on some lipstick. If you're a guy, you probably won't want to put on some lipstick, but if you're a girl, put on some lipstick and kiss the paper and then stick it on a mirror or somewhere that you can see it every day, so that every time you forget what makes you worthy or how beautiful you are or how much you're capable of, you look at that and you remember, and you just come back to that place of, okay, that my relationship with myself is good. Like, and when that relationship is good, we're able to be so much nicer to everyone else around us. How do you feel about Venus and Aries?
Beautiful. So I'm going to use the traditional dispositorship because on that day, when Venus ingresses Aries, Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is still in Pisces, and it's going to sextile Sun. It's also going to sextile Uranus, and we have Jupiter sextile Pluto at that time. We're still floating in Venus conjunct Jupiter, and the big conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces is still an energy that we're also going to still float in while Mars is in Pisces, and while all these planets are slowly moving Pisces, there may still be a lot of fog or haze or confusion or floatiness. But the beautiful thing to work with is with Mars sextiling with Sun sextile Mars and everything that I just mentioned is, can we really think about our desire? And what I'm remembering right now is this quote from Deborah Harkness. Magic is desire made real. And so how can we create magic every day? It doesn't have to be like all woo woo and be like abracadabra, I'm gonna it's actually in the mundane where we can find magic. It's in the moments where we feel so confused and floaty that we actually try to do something about it, and that's Mars, right? That's our action, that's our drive towards something. And so what is it really that we truly desire? Can we think about it not just from a subconscious level, because we also have moon square Mars that day, but can we use it in a more conscious way? So definitely that list is going to help. But we're still in eclipse energy, so it's still a very ruminating time. Mars being in Pisces, Mars doesn't really like being in Pisces because this is fire in water, but we have Venus that's actually moving to fire. So definitely we can use, how we can use Venus's love energy of working towards harmony to empower Mars to use our desire as our drive to become happier and be more balanced, instead of just chasing after our desires for just the sake of it. What is the deeper meaning behind these desires is how I'm feeling into this day. So that's just the third for you. And on the fourth, Karina, you want to?
Sure. So on the fourth, we have the aspects that you were pretty much talking about. They wouldn't be exact yet on the third, but we're feeling that energy really big because these are big planets, and we already know that when a planet is moving towards something, we're feeling that effect more than when it's actually in that place. No. So we have Jupiter sextile Pluto retrograde. I feel like this is Jupiter's last hurrah before moving into Aries. To me, this is dreaming up the life that we want to live. What would we do if we had no limitations, no memory, no consequences? And then don't do it, just consider what would you do? And know that there could be consequences. But I think it's a good time to just understand, like, what are these dreams and what is stopping us from reaching for these dreams? Because Capricorn, um, Pluto in Capricorn and Pluto retrograde in Capricorn is showing us so many different possibilities. Okay, this used to be your belief. You can bring in this new belief, but then this new belief may make you feel this way or that way. And I think it's just a day to remember that the human experience will always have pros and cons, in one way or another. And then it's also to just continue unlearning the old paradigms that are stuck on us. Um, and like you said, it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy because this is an eclipse portal and we are sharing with you these possible things that you can do, but maybe you're not going to want to feel like doing it. And if you're not feeling like doing it, that's totally fine. Don't do it at all. If you are feeling like doing it, and if you're feeling like you need something to kind of propel you a little bit more forward, go ahead and do it. This is why we like to share like everything that we have, so that you take what fits and let go of what doesn't. And then another aspect we have on the 4th is Venus square Lilith. I like this. It's Venus in Aries and Lilith in Cancer. And I feel like that implores us to embrace our worth, to take back the power that choice gives us, and to make decisions that make us happy, even though it irritates people around us. I feel like that's Lilith and Cancer energy. Like, people are not always going to like what we're doing, but then if it nurtures people and if it nurtures ourselves, I think it's important to do it. And as we keep doing it, we're going to keep magnetizing people that are in their power, that are doing the same things for themselves. And especially as women empowerment is growing and growing and growing. And we've spoken about it before, about how feminism does not necessarily need to be like feminists triumphing and like the masculine race going down. No, we're looking for equality. But then, as we already know, the scales have been tipped so much that as we're looking for equality, it's getting tipped another way. And this is causing a lot more triggers to come out and a lot more wounded masculinity. And we're seeing this with Mars and Pisces, especially. I feel like people wanting to do things, not knowing how to do things, men or women not knowing how to show their emotions and instead just escaping, moving into watching shows or watching sports or watching anything to just numb our minds. And it's okay to do it once in a while. But this Pisces energy has us doing it more and more and more. And yeah, there's so much more to say about that, but let's just go to the next aspect. The next aspect, the same day as Mars sextile Uranus. I'm sure you'll have an interesting take on this. For me, it is shake-up energy, but because they're both feminine signs, I feel like it's creative shake-up energy, perhaps something related to nature and water. And I feel like it's a good day to get our feet on the grass and to listen to what the earth is communicating with us, because it's from the earth that we're going to find this grounded energy to actually take action on the breakthroughs and crazy things that Uranus may be giving us. Again, like Thea said, the only way, like the best way to deal with Uranus energy is to just not prepare or not expect anything, because when it's there, you're going to have to do something about it. And the way we react in these circumstances is what gives away everything, right? How can we learn to be adaptable when there's so much fixity going on in the sky? Like, yes, there's a lot of adaptability, but there is also a lot of fixity. And come on, Sun conjunct Uranus happening the next day, that's big. But for the 4th, yeah, that was the 4th. Yeah, I want to say step into your wild nature through a dance, body tapping, body shaking, or maybe even a quick hit. Anything to remind you of your courage and strength when you're determined to do something. Always a good idea to get our juices flowing when the energies in the sky are too dense, because I know all too well this Taurus energy and how it just makes us want to stay and just stay and just stay longer, even though it's not good anymore, just stay. And to me, maybe it's because I'm a fire sign, the easiest way I can think of to get that energy moving. It's like, get a dance, get some hit, get something. Because once we get those juices flowing, then we're like, okay, we are human with these bodies that are capable of doing things and not just sitting on the couch like a potato. Um, but what would be your practical tip for this day, and how would you embrace the fourth?
I would actually, my practical tip here is listen to your body. And what does your body really need? Because Mars separates.
Mhm.
Mars, so like one of the key signatures of Mars is it heats up, it separates, it severs, it disrupts. I mean, well, that's mostly Uranus that's disrupting it. So separating, disrupting in the body, everything that you said, it's so easy to cop out and numb out with Mars in Pisces. It's becoming really intense with things that can be mindless for us, or things that can help us to cop out from everything that's happening in the world. Be that I mean, whatever it is for you, it's different, right? Well, for me, what came up for me was really like I've been offline, and I've been copping out in a sense. I've been separating my reality by just burying my nose in books, and that's not really dealing with the mundane, right? But that's I guess that's the challenge, and that's the gift of what we're doing here, and that's why we're still sharing, because even though we're sharing this, we're also going through the energies with you. We're sharing what works for us, but it's always as a tip is discern and listen to your body and feel into what works for you. Because the next day, this is an Earth Taurus shattering Uranus event. Sun conjoined Uranus. It's shaky. This is groundbreaking, literally. So if we are not able to do some of the practical tips and exercises that we are gifted by the cosmos to work with the energy before the intensities come in, then, well, yeah, we're really going to feel shaken up, right? I mean, notwithstanding everything that's happening in the world, I think the shadow side of technology is anxiety is just blown out into proportion because we're seeing and knowing and finding out things that are way beyond our control. But it is also an opportunity for us to dive into our feelings. That's Mars and Pisces also. Can we dive into the gunk, the feelings, the emotions, and remember that we are one humanity? And that everything that we're feeling, if we're feeling so intensely, Mars in Pisces, it's a window to the collective unconscious or conscious. Like we're just everyone is just really feeling into everything because there is so much to feel, so much that we haven't been feeling and dealing with as a collective. We are being asked to deal with it, and these events, these shakeups, are the opportunity to actually deal with it because we're gonna be. I mean, they're gonna be staring at it. We're gonna be staring at it and they're going to be staring blankly at us, back at us. So, what can we do and how can we change for the better?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's pretty fun energy though, because it adds a spark to the world that's just so determined and stubborn and wants to stay in its comfort zone. And then you have the lightning being like, yo, you got to move. And it's like,
Yep.
oh my God. Yeah, it's shake up to break up energy, right? I remember I was reading Nav's an article that Nav's wrote a couple of days ago, and he writes basketball articles, but then he makes it so relatable to like life and like storytelling. So in that article, he wrote two things happen under pressure. It's either pipes bust or a diamond forms. And so that's the question, right? What's going to happen when this happens? Are you going to burst? Are you going to be a pipe that bursts? Or are you going to feel like a diamond that, yes, it's so painful to change, but you're going to be created into something beautiful. And not to say you are not already beautiful, you already are beautiful, but us as humans every day, we're like changing works of art, right? And how can we have grace to appreciate the change that's happening instead of force the change and force the change and force the change again, because there's just so much forcing and shoving and it's got to be like this and it's got to be like that. And, you know, how can we just be a little more empathetic? Yes, there's so much empathy in the sky, but how can we add that empathy and like just anchor it down and remember that the earth needs it? And then I also feel like, are we going to break through, or are we going to cling on to what's comfortable and what makes us feel secure, even though the definition of security is rapidly changing as the years go by? Once upon a time, security meant having a lot of money in the bank, right? What does security mean today? I mean, today our bank numbers can go to zero when we're checking how much money we have in the bank account, when we're pulling it up on the computer, whether or not we have zero. And so is how much money you have in the bank still a good way of measuring your worth and your security? And is that how you're measuring your security? And if it is, ask yourself, what needs to be shaken up there? How can you add a spark to your knowing of what stable even is, right? And how can you get on the rocket and use Venus and Aries to allow you to dare more, do more, believe more, create more, love more? And the practical tip, I feel like, is journal which habits are keeping you small and replace each of them with an affirmation that reminds you of your worthiness in your own eyes. So ideally, you write them beside each other, and like you write what keeps you small, you cross it out, and then you write the affirmation, and then you just keep doing that, so that whenever you come back to this, I think I'm like this, you see it crossed out and you're like, no, that's not me, this is me. And looking at things like this every day, like it's been proven to change the way our minds work. Yeah, that's my tip for today. How about you? And oh wait, very fascinating, do you know the significance of number 5 in numerology? I'm curious because this is 5-5. No.
We can definitely research
Yeah.
more into the number magic. But 5-5, that's when the sun is at 15th. Am I right? No, that's the 6th. Okay, so I'll move to the 6th.
Okay, hold on. Number 5, sorry, represents the planet Mercury and is associated with the senses that we have. So, and it's interesting, right? Because you say that Uranus is an involved Mercury, or Mercury is an evolved Uranus.
Uranus,
yeah,
is the higher mind, while Mercury is the lower mind.
So we still have some Mercury action on this day. So it's interesting, I think, to notice our mind, even though like Taurus is all about senses and our entire body. How can you notice what's going on in your mind and the breakthroughs coming in through your mind? But maybe we won't get it if we're not grounded in our body, like you were saying. Like if we're not doing the work, we're so shaky that instead of Uranus being like, here is your gift, Uranus is like, here, let me add some more like of a skateboard under your feet.
Which is like, I mean, with Mercury, Mercury is well within the shadow. Well, now, while we're recording this, until this time. So definitely everything that you're saying, how are we thinking about how we communicate our values is still what's coming up. And that practical tip, that exercise of having like putting pen to paper and apples to apples and oranges to oranges, but actually no, apples to oranges, or whichever you like least. That would be what you're going to cross out. And that's really positive reinforcement and even positive psychology, because you're giving yourself a truth that you've been believing, but you're giving yourself proofs of the opposite, and at least opposite proofs that you are more ideal for you to believe. I think, this whole May is a perfect opportunity for you to continue with that journal, and like what Karina said, keep going back to what actually you write. While Mercury is going retrograde and while Pluto is going all roto-rooter in the area where Capricorn is in your chart. These are still earth signs, and this has everything to do with the feminine, everything to do with how you can receive, how you can be deep into your body and listen to your feelings and your emotions, everything that we weren't really taught nor equipped to do nor deal with. This is a month to shake that all up and remember that side of us. That's it for me. Where are we? Are we on the 6th?
Yep. So the 6th, we have Mercury sextile Venus. Mercury is in Gemini, Venus is in Aries. To me, this is The way we communicate our thoughts is a mirror into our soul and how much we believe we're worth. If we're a little bit shaky on our confidence, this can look like oversharing and saying things that absolutely don't matter in the slightest bit and just speaking about anything and everything while possibly getting aggressive just for some attention. I feel like this is Aries, Gemini energy. But if we are confident and if we know every bit of our worth, I feel like this could look like sharing facts that people actually need to know and becoming a leader. It's building a network of people that could help each other out, a conscious community of creators and believers. It could also look like getting to know your neighbors and getting closer to your siblings, building new relationships that could be beneficial for both in the long run. My practical tip for this day is smile at someone random. And if you're feeling daring, make a new friend, strike up a conversation with someone new, because new perspective is sometimes all we need to kind of get that spark right back up. How you feel?
What I want to share for this day is it's Beltane. It's Beltane. Am I even saying that? And solar Beltane is actually when the sun is at 15 degrees of Taurus. This is a cross quarter day, and cross quarter days are when the sun is at 15 degrees of any fixed sign, of any of the fixed sign. And cross quarter days are, well, just that. It's a quarter point between equinox. We just had Aries equinox, and then the next is June solstice. So we have eclipse, we have retrograde, we have all this indication of we need to change, we have all these indications of shifting energies, and we have Beltane. And all of this is just really a turning point, which is the signature of this month. So hopefully you are able to glean insights from all of our practical tips. Karina has written so much beautiful, yummy practical cosmic tips for us to follow this month. So yeah, I'm actually starting to take notes because I'm definitely going to do those journal prompts.
Yeah, every month. So what happens is when I prepare for these calls, I've noticed, okay, a little insight into me. I've noticed that with my Cancer, Mercury, and Venus in my 10th house, midheaven, I have so many words and so many things that I want to share. And then if I try to do it just like this, like if I try to what is it called, free flow, I just can't, because there are so many ideas coming through and so many beautiful things that to me they're beautiful and I want to share them. But how do I grasp? And then I find myself like trying to say a word and saying like two words at once. So when I channel for these, I go and just write down everything that comes to me for these dates. And I think it's so amazing that you're able to flow so beautifully with it, because I share these things that I've written and you add so much substance to the astrological side of it, and do like Beltane and like knowing all these like more important but facts, right? Facts are pretty well, I wouldn't say they're important, but they're very handy. Again, words and definitions, right? They could be important to some people and they could be handy to some people, but it's always nice to know. It's always nice to know how something came to be, and that always allows us to evolve a little more, I feel like. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Mutual reception.
Beautiful. Okay, so that was the sixth. Let's move on to the seventh. So the seventh is Sun sextile Mars. Sun is in Taurus, Mars is in Pisces. It took a little while for me to understand how I felt about this until I just wrote, this is the day that you likely won't want to do much. For me, it feels like loungy, chill energy, which may make us want to stay in bed a little longer and wrap ourselves in a burrito and want to spend a lot of time lazing and doing nothing. I say this because it's Taurus and Pisces, and Taurus is pretty lazy and likes to feel luxurious. And Mars and Pisces, as we realized, if we're feeling a little too much empathy, then we realize that maybe we're going to cop out, and sometimes staying in bed is a way to cop out. I wouldn't say it's a good idea to cop out, but I do want to say if you allow yourself to kind of slow down and lounge and chill, and not think. This is when our ego is not playing. This is when we are able to actually come up with ideas, or like you were saying, when you're doing nothing, when you're in that space, then you're like, okay, what can I do now? What can I create now? So I think this is beautiful creative energy, but if we don't give ourselves the time to just slow down and do nothing, where do we get the inspiration for creating? That's what I have. I want to hear how you feel. My practical tip for this day is have some art supplies, a book, and your journal around so that when inspiration hits, you're ready. How you feel?
I'm feeling just aside from that major aspect, because I'm also seeing a lot of minor aspects on this day, especially since we're still moving away from that Uranus and Sun Uranus conjunction, and we're having a lot of sextiles with Mars. I feel like there may still be information that's going to be revealed and continuously being and will continuously be revealed, that will help us determine the course that we want to take together as a collective, because Sun is still moving towards the North Node and it's still in Taurus. So things, information that may be revealed around how we communicate our values, what's really valuable to us as a collective, what information are actually going to help us decide to align with a collective purpose. Notwithstanding this day, it's just a couple of days before election. How are you really aligning with your how are you really aligning yourself with groups and tribes, and intentions, that can bring us closer? I think this still just really reverberates and echoes the themes that I mentioned the previous days. But like Irina said, as we move towards and as we move out of these big conjunctions and these big transits, especially when we talk about Uranus and Pluto, it's not concentrated in a day, but it can actually go up to 2 weeks. So what information is being revealed, or how can you research further? Especially this is Mercury in shadow, and not all of the information that are given to us may be actual or real or true. So how can you do your homework and really research on things that matter to you? Especially as Venus is in Aries, we all are gonna have like our individual values, and we may have a tendency, I mean, like this whole energy of Venus in Aries, we may have a tendency to really just fight for what's right for us and just fight for the values that we believe in, like take up to the streets and be like, no, we want change today. Where do you want to invest your energy? Do you want to invest your energy in fighting for right? Because you're still enrolling in a polarity. I'm not saying just stay in bed and be like, I'm going to bury myself in the covers and just bahala na si Lord, what's going to happen to our country? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying is, are you investing your energy to perpetuate the divide? Or are you investing your energy to actually come up with creative ways to minimize that divide? Because we want a balance here. We don't want to tip to either just left or right, but we want to meet in the middle. And all this Uranian Pluto energy is allowing the polarity, because we're gonna see this polarity in action, because it's an opportunity for us to see the extremes and then decide for ourselves. This is Venus and Aries, right? Like these are the values that I actually want to balance out in my life. So where are you tipping? I feel like that's the energy that's coming up to me, seeing the chart as a whole for this day.
And the value work is important. It's so important to put that work in before this time, especially if you're someone that's really invested in the elections and in the Philippines, and you've been aware of what's going on and the way things are unfolding. It's important to have that value worked down. And I say this because on the 10th, which is the day after elections, Mercury stations retrograde, freaking right on cue. And you're talking about the polarities, and nothing is going to do a better job at showing us the polarities than Mercury retrograding in its own sign. And it's the sign of the twins, which is also the sign of dualities, which is also the sign of alter egos, which is also the sign of understanding that there are always two sides. And in the world we're living in right now, there are no longer only two sides. Every single thing we can think about is multidimensional. Mercury in retrograde, I feel like, will show us this a little bit more, but what I have listed is, with all the chatter that Mercury has created as it's moved through Gemini since the beginning of the month, go back and revisit if everything that you've shared is actually necessary and true, or if you've been sharing things without any substance behind it. Mercury is ruled by Gemini, so retrograding in this sign, it gives us insight to how we communicate, not only with ourselves, but also how we communicate, how we communicate with others is a reflection of how we communicate with ourselves. It's a great time to ask, how is your mental health? Ask yourself how your mental health is. Understand if it needs some combing through, if you need some support. What kind of support do you need? What do you need to do to address this and to get your mind to a better place? Because Mercury rules the mind, Mercury rules communication, Mercury rules research. But if your mind is not on straight, and it's okay for it to not be on straight with everything that's going on in the world right now, how can you bring it back? How can you understand what needs to be done so that as Mercury stations direct again in Taurus and moves back into Gemini, you feel a little more stable? I don't know if stable is the right word, but we need some sort of stability here, especially with all the Gemini action that's going to be coming up, and with, we'll talk about it in a second, hold on. Also, I want to say, use this retrograde to understand where you might be a little too flighty and a little too animated for the sake of creating drama and steering something up. It's a good look at the dualities and the polarities that we face, not only with our minds, but also as we experience life in general. It's a never-ending balancing act. But as Mercury moves all the way back into Taurus, we are going to be reminded of our values and how to really ground words into our bodies before we bring them out and share useless information. Because when we put Aries and Gemini together, this is really, I feel like, hello, I want to talk and say what I feel 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 again. Do you want to say what you feel? Oh, I don't care. I'm going to tell you more about how I feel. Like, that feels like Gemini and Aries. And so if you catch yourself doing it, how can you take a step back? And there's nothing wrong with doing it, but I feel like notice why you're doing it, because there is a little child in there calling out for you to be doing this. There is a little Karina or a little Thea in our cases, right? Being like, hey, you didn't listen to me when you were younger. Can you listen to me now? And if we're not listening, that's when we're just oversharing unnecessarily, because we're looking for other people to hear what we have to say when we're not listening to what we have to say. And this is going to be amplified when Aries conjuncts Chiron. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit when it happens. But yeah, this is what I have for the 10th. What do you feel about Mercury retrograde, and what is your practical tip for this whole retrograde?
I'm going to go back to what I said. Trying to work in, or at least reflect, your role in the duality and how it's perpetuating, how you're allowing it to perpetuate in your life, because there's just more than two sides. And I want to bring in again dimensionen. These are just units of measure to only one variable. We only think that there are a lot of variables because that is the illusion, right? We are given the illusion of Maya, of separation, like, without going also woo into this. But how can we take a step back and have a grander vision, because the opposite of Gemini is Jupiter, Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter. It's seeing things from an eagle's point of view, whereas Gemini is like, it's either I'm left or I'm right, but I am seeing all the perspectives, but I think I'm going this way. Whereas Sagittarius is like, I see all things, and then just, seeing a higher truth behind all of this. But since it's a regress back to Earth, back to Taurus, I feel like it's really a lot of information that's going to be given to us around how we have been separating ourselves from nature, separating ourselves from groups that actually help us go back to nature. And with the world going back to normal, and with people, meeting and chatting and socializing again, which is all about Gemini energy. Also, Gemini rules short distance travel, aside from just, the usual communication and socializing and all that. It's even with what Karina said, how can we find new people as the world opens up again? Because perhaps this can also help us have a wider perspective and a bigger worldview, aside from the people that we've just, allowed ourselves to be with for the longest time. I'm also seeing that Mars sextiles, Sun sextile Mars, is a big energy. They're moving to an exact again. They were exact a few days ago, and they're still in a tight orb, like 1 degree, less than 1 degree orb. And I feel like this is gonna go on for a while. So yeah, just use this opportunity to keep going back to your bodies instead of allowing yourself to be separated from this earth body, because of everything that's going on in your mind, and all of the triggers that are coming up for you to be like, bah, step back, see things from a bigger perspective, and try to go back to the tools that you have cultivated while we were on lockdown, to ground your anxiety, is what I want to say for the first half of May.
I like that. Oh man, I was gonna say something. Yeah, I lost it. That was beautifully put. Thank you very much. It is very shaky energy, it feels like, and I'm interested to see how it turns out. Oh, okay. I remember what I was gonna say. I love that you brought in Sagittarius, because I feel like the retrograde in Gemini invites us to remember to be teachable, but know who you're being taught by. Because, okay, so I pulled a card, and the card that fell out was the devil. And so are you being taught by the devil, which is, the devil is essentially Capricorn. And so it's being so involved in the 3D reality of things. It's being so programmed. It's, look at how the devil is essentially puppeting the human, right? And the human's like, shut up. I don't want to hear this anymore, because the devil's just so loud. That feels like Mercury retrograde in Gemini, like our minds trying to play. But if we stay in our bodies, if we're so stable with our values, with our worth, if we know what we're doing, then this like playing of our mind is not gonna throw us into a tornado, but instead it's going to give us new ways of seeing, new ways of being, new ways of understanding. Like you said, like how can we pull out to get that eagle eye view, because we always have that opportunity, but then I think we forget when we think that we're only teachers or we're only students. Like how can we remember that we're forever going to be both? But where are you getting your information? Okay, we move into the 11th. Another big thing happening on the 11th, we have Jupiter entering Aries until July 29th and then stationing retrograde. So this happens at 7:22 a.m. Philippine time. So it's like from expanding all the water and our dreamscape and our sense of empathy and having conversations with illusions, Jupiter is finally making its way into Aries before it retrogrades. But then this is just like a little preview, right, before it dips right back into Pisces.
Mm.
And yes, this is big and like creative and trend-setting energy, but Mercury is in retrograde.
Mm.
And so how can you kind of temper what's coming up? I feel like this is also a strong, I'm like getting an itch. It's like a strong ability for these triggers to come up louder and louder and
Mm.
louder, because it's Jupiter in Aries where Chiron is, and our mind is already here playing.
Mm.
But the bright side is it's big creative thinking, it's breaking barriers, and it's the amplification of new ideas, new ways of talking, new ways of being, maybe even new ways of understanding ourselves and how we present ourselves to the world. Have a look again which house Aries is in for you, and that will show you which aspect of your life will be amplified through this transit, as well as where you can be a little more daring, trend setting, and free. My practical tip is reflect on what are your big revolutionary ideas that have always seemed a little too far-fetched and crazy. Start thinking about them again and allow them to play out in your mind and see what comes of them. You don't need to take action, but think about them so that you can see what Mercury retrograde in Gemini brings you about these thoughts, because it could be like really like thoughts of unworthiness. And then when we see this, we get to work with it because Mercury is retrograde. Retrograde is always like a retest, right? A recheck. Okay, we've gone through this space, but let's go back and see, did you learn your lessons? And I feel like it's going to be happening a lot. We're going to be asked a lot if we've learned our lessons, especially because it's an eclipse portal and we're moving towards a lunar eclipse in Scorpio. I mean, that's the most intense sign of the zodiac, I feel. And so this is intense energy building up, building up, building up. We have Uranus, we have Jupiter moving, we have Sun conjunct North Node the next day, we have Sun conjunct Chiron, we have just it's a lot of activation, but
Mm.
activation, I feel like that's asking us to reflect rather than move forward. But it's funny because I feel like the call is so loud to do things.
Mm.
But then again, like if we're doing without thinking, are we really doing the right thing?
Mm.
How do you feel about Jupiter moving into Aries?
I like your last question. I think we're going to zone in on that question precisely because Mars, the ruler of Aries, is directly opposite Moon, or rather, Moon is opposing Mars on that day. And Moon opposite Mars, the signature of that is intense emotion, fighting for security, separating from this can also be a good opportunity to separate yourself from the past because the moon rules are past. But then moon is in Virgo. So the energy of moon in Virgo is I want things this way. And with Jupiter in Aries, again, Aries for me is the sign of the I am. It's an individuated, selfish sign. Not that I'm saying selfish in a bad way. Again, light and shadow side to being selfish, right? In a way, we can expand our boundaries. And you can really like just focus on how we're initiating, like everything Karina just said. But again, I just want to reiterate your question. Um, Please, can you ask your question again for everyone? Because I think that's a very, very important reflection to have on this day.
Was it the practical tip question that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so my practical tip or question is, what are your big revolutionary ideas that have always seemed a little too far-fetched and crazy? Start thinking about them again and allow them to play around in your mind and see what comes of them. I actually think you might get a better idea as well as Mercury retrogrades back into Taurus and then again goes forward in Taurus, but start thinking about them, I feel like, because as you were saying, it's a good time to let go of what's in the past and kind of move forward as much as we can, I guess. I pulled a card, or a card flew to the floor. It's temperance. Temperance is the card that corresponds to Sagittarius. So our little Sagittarius over here, Miss, you can, I'm sure you can relate. It's seeing both sides, right? It's seeing the dark and the light. It's understanding to work in moderation. It's understanding that we're human, but we also have wings. We also have a light body while we have a human body. I feel like so much of this call has been about balance and moderation and understanding how to temper ourselves before anything. Which leads us into the next day, which is pretty big. Sun conjunct North Node. Is it the next day? No, it's 2 days after. So Jupiter enters Aries on the 11th. Sun conjunct North Node is on the 13th. 13th exact, but it's already building up to it and then going to be building down from it. It's not?
Yeah. It is. So that energy is it. We're building towards that Sun conjunct North Node. And again, like all the reflections of how can we work towards getting ourselves back into nature. So please, can you allow yourself to spend time with yourself and spend time with nature this day, especially with all this Mars fiery energy and the energies that we're getting the days before. Tempers are flying high. And revolution to fight for what's right for me is also running high, especially as Chiron is in conjunct Uranus, I think for the first half of May, the whole of it. So it's still a lot of triggers. It's triggering a lot of content that will allow you to question the identity that you really so attach yourself to. And we still have this Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn action going on. So this is really an opportunity for us to transform the structures that we have fixed ourselves into and create a new future, create a new dream. Is what I'm seeing in the chart. How about you? What are your practical tips for this day? This is a big day that we've been leading up to for this year.
Yeah, we really have been leading up to it. And I just want to put a disclaimer in here. Because we felt that Sun conjunct Neptune, was that the day that we were like
Jupiter conjunct Neptune?
Jupiter conjunct see, everything is just mixing up in my brain right now. But because of how much we were looking forward to that aspect, we expected so much of that day, right? So because we're telling you about these days that the exact things are happening, please don't put pressure on the days if you're not feeling things happen. If you're not feeling things happen, maybe things are going on under the surface and they'll boil up in a little bit of time. But I feel like when we put pressure on ourselves to, like, for example, today Sun conjunct Uranus, and we're not having these breakthrough ideas and we're not feeling like electrical things are happening or whatever, don't worry about it, because maybe you don't think anything is happening, but in your subconscious things are happening, and it's just going to take a little more time to bubble up. Because when we get so distracted in the ego being like, oh, nothing is happening, then we really don't give ourselves the chance to experience what actually is happening under the surface. Which takes us back to the 13th. So that Sun conjunct North Node, what I have is our collective destiny comes to the forefront today. How do we value our planet? How do we value our fellow earthlings? How can we be more grateful in our everyday, anchoring more love, more beauty, more peace on this land that has already seen so much destruction and that has been used and abused for so long? How can we come back to the knowing that our skin is made from mud, ashes to ashes? We have this life, and contrary to popular belief of humans today, it is such an absolute gift. What are you going to do to make it count? What are you going to do to show just how grateful you are to have this body, to have this life, to have this human spacesuit? How are you going to make a difference? And how are you going to mother humanity as you mother yourself? This is a big one because, I noticed this in myself. And so many times, like when I'm walking on the street or I'm close to other people, I'll look down or I'll look away. I won't make eye contact. Sometimes I will when I feel like the person looks friendly and nice, but when a person looks like angry, I won't really make eye contact. I'll be a little bit afraid. But I mean, if we're talking about mothering humanity, wouldn't that be looking at people, smiling at people, kind of just at least sending out love to whoever it is? So today, how can you notice if you're looking at someone and avoiding eye contact? And instead of avoiding eye contact, can you at least smile? I mean, I know we're wearing masks, and I mean, you can't see a smile, but you can see when someone's smiling through their eyes. um yeah, I think the call for just coming back to humanity and coming back to humans and loving humans again is really, really loud. My practical tip for this day is to journal. What are some improvements you hope to see within the state of this earth through your lifetime? Write about it, pray on it, and put a crystal on it, and write, and so it is. I think this is important because we do so much like envisioning and dreaming and wondering what we want for ourselves. But how about what we want for the planet that we live on? And considering that all these energies are working in our favor, I mean, come on, they have to also be working on the Earth's favor. And when we're putting crystals that hopefully we've gotten from the land on intentions and dreams that we have for the earth, I feel like that allows it to amplify. Again, as you were talking, I pulled a card, and it's a Two of Pentacles. And it's funny because it's very similar to the Temperance card, right? Where he was holding the moon and the sun. Over here, she's understanding that there is a planet here, but then she also has her bag. There's a tangible reality, but there's also an intangible reality. How do you balance both of them within this human body? That's how I feel about the 13th, which leads us to the last day that we're going to talk about today, which is a big one. You want to start?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so this day we have Venus conjunct Chiron in Aries, and we also have Mars sextile North Node. What I wrote is, how can we love our wounds so that they allow us to create a better world? When we are hurt, there are two ways that we can go about it. We can lash out, unleash our temper, and yell, something that Aries is no stranger to. Or we can allow ourselves to go through the roller coaster and then allow ourselves time to analyze where it's all stemming from and how we can work with it. This is what I was talking about earlier, the little us inside us asking for attention, asking to be seen. So come back to the little note that you made when Venus moved to Aries, that little one where you wrote what you're good at and put a kiss mark. Come back to that note and actually look at how awesome you are. Look at all the things that you're capable of doing. What do you feel like you do best? Is there some way that you can do more of this every day? How can you allow it to morph into something you do for humanity as you heal yourself in the process?
That's beautiful.
That's what I feel for Venus conjunct Chiron. I know that it sounds easy when we say it like this, but I mean, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes understanding that we're only little babies and we need to honor the little babies in us before we can become like grown-ups. But yeah, and then we have Mars sextile North Node. And what I wrote there is, what is one actionable step that you can take every day to bring the planet closer to what you envision it to be at the end of your lifetime here? How will you leave your legacy in the world through love?
That's beautiful. I'm seeing here 22 degrees of Mars and North Node. This is building something steady, something long term. It's really using your drive, your attention, your passion towards that deliberate movement towards higher purpose. And I'm not saying higher purpose of transcending out of, just transcending. I actually want to reframe the term transcend to integrate. Because we're not here to transcend our egos, we're here to integrate our egos and integrate light and shadow. And with so much Mars in Pisces, I really hope that this energy for the collective is allowing us to just to dive into that. That it's not about ascension, it's not about transcending this plane, but it's about integrating all these dualities and polarities around us. I feel like that's the whole energy of this whole year with Saturn squaring the nodes. And I think we talked about that in great detail last month. Yeah, for this particular transit, this isn't something that's just gonna happen for the day. Like all of these energies that we've been talking about for the first part of May is going to reverberate for at least 6 months, because this is eclipse portal for you. And with all this Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto action, and the sun with the nodes, this is a collective future that we're all building towards. And Taurus is the steady, deliberate builder. And I hope we can really use this energy, and with our practical tip, like practical cosmic magic, right? Really use this invitation from the universe to create deliberately, slowly but surely. This is a month to slow down so we can go real fast when, yeah, we can go real fast by June. But this month, it's a lot of separating from the past, separating from our triggers, using the energy of Venus and the energy of that Jupiter and Neptune conjunction in Pisces to really tap into our to really tap into the magic of the cosmos and tap into the magic of our community, and even technology. So yeah, slowly but surely, direction is more important than speed.
My Taurus moon will agree with you on that. I actually love that because it's so fascinating to think that Taurus is about being deliberate and slow and actually thinking too and trudging through. And Mercury in Gemini, which would usually be moving so fast and so quick, is retrograde. So it's really like slow, 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 slow. But I can already see a slingshot come June, and we're like, go, guys, go, guys, go.
Yep. Yep.
um, but where we are right now is, so as you were talking, I pulled the last tarot card for this part, and so fitting, it is the Queen of Pentacles. And as you were saying, it's not about transcendence, it's about integrating. She has integrated, she knows her worth, she knows what she stands for, she is holding this coin, she has branches integrated in her turban, which almost make her look like a deer. And so it's, how can we integrate all the things that we're learning through the earth? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be about researching. It doesn't have to be sitting in front of a computer all day. It doesn't have to be learning on social media all day. It could be as simple as sitting on the grass, watching a tree, and watching what a bird does when it flies by. Because it's Taurus season. The invitation is to observe nature. It is to come back to your body. It is to remember that the earth's pain is our pain, and our pain is the earth's pain. I repeat this again and again because I heard it in an Akashic record reading I did last year when I was doing readings as planets were moving into signs. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, when Venus was moving into Taurus, and Akashic Records or the Pinnacle or whoever I channel was like, what makes you think you're not experiencing what the earth is experiencing? Like, how arrogant of you to even think that, because you are made of the planet. Like, you think you're sad because of no reason. No, you're sad because the planet we're living on is aching. And like, who else is going to feel it? Who else is going to feel it if not the earthlings that are living in the earth? How about we start acting more like earthlings? How about we start actually accepting that we live on this planet and that we're supposedly caretakers and stewards of the planet? How about we stop destroying the planet? How about we stop throwing trash in the ocean where it comes up and ruins the beautiful shoreline or forests? Like, come on, people. Come on. We're humans, but not to destroy the earth. We're humans, but to bring the earth up higher. How can we do that? Through integration. And then I usually bring the Starseed Oracle to our workshop things, our practical cosmic magic. But today I brought The Universe Has Your Back. by
Oof.
Gabrielle Bernstein because all this Pisces energy needed it. So 3 cards came out for us, and I think this is a good note to kind of end this with after you give a few words. But the first one is, I let go of the shadow of the past by seeing someone else for the first time with the eyes of love. This is so
Ooh.
Mars in Pisces.
Also, that day we have moon moving towards a conjunction to the south node. So that card is so perfect.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. I'll repeat it too. I let go of the shadow of the past by seeing someone for the first time with the eyes of love.
So beautiful.
Of course, the second one is obstacles are detours in the right direction. So how can we honor that? How can we honor the obstacles that come our way, especially while Mercury is in retrograde? Because God knows there are going to be triggers and obstacles. But like we were saying earlier, it's all in how we respond or react to the obstacles. And so can you honor that they are actually detours in the right direction and they're taking you where you're meant to go, but just in Taurus fashion, a little bit slow. And then the last one is, when I lean on certainty and faith, I change my mind about the world I see. This is that. That's so beautiful. When I lean on certainty and faith. Pisces. And Taurus, I feel like, and the North Node, and collective destiny, and just everything.
And Neptune. Okay, so we, oops, on my back. We
Yep, you're
can't
back.
make this thing up. Every time that you pull a card, it's insane because I'm staring at the chart and I'm seeing a yard. So let me break down the energies here. We have Uranus in a far, far sextile from Neptune. And then we have Uranus quincunx moon. Moon is conjunct south node, and we still have that energy between Chiron and Venus. Literally cannot make up those cards. Those cards really sum up beautifully what everything I just said. If that sounded Hebrew to you, I'm so sorry, but those cards those cards summed up that energy so perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. It also sums up Pluto in retrograde, right? With the obstacles being steps in the right direction. And I guess if we want to sum it up after these cards, it's really just understanding that we have the capability and the potential to create and live in a new world without it necessarily existing around us, because what exists around us is only what we believe exists around us. All this Neptune magic and Jupiter magic. If there is anything we've learned as Jupiter has moved through Pisces, it's that everything is an illusion. See, even my words became an illusion. But yeah, I feel it's all a matter of how we choose to see. And I mean, there are 2 eyes here, 2 eyes, and they look different, right? One is colored inside and one is colored on the outside. One is so focused and one is like, ooh, let me see the colors the world has to offer. But wait, there are also stars. Cards.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful pull, especially as we move towards the culmination of the eclipse season. We're inching towards a total lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Definitely more about that in part
Are
2.
we gonna see it from here, or no? It's in the afternoon, is it?
No, we're not going to see it from here, but it's a primetime eclipse in the rest of the United States. So we're definitely going to see a lot of photos of that. And yeah, it's a total lunar eclipse, guys. And the energy that we're building up to November's eclipse, which is the eclipse that we're going to see, that's why I said like this solar eclipse, although we're not going to see it, is going to be revelational, because the information that's gonna come up, albeit destructive and maybe earth-shaking, will change the course of things. These are the nodes of fate. It changes our fate, and it's a collective energy. So, yep, hang on to your hats. Don't try to find the ground under you. remember to just remember that you're here. Remember that you matter. And whenever you're feeling dissociating, tap. I think that's such a good practical tip to tap into areas that you feel are asleep, especially your heart, the middle of your sternum. Rub lymphatic massages are still so good, especially as Mars is still in Pisces, you guys. Even though we have all this energy in Aries, Mars rules Aries, so all those energies still deposits back to Mars and Pisces. So drain. This is an opportunity to separate from the past, drain all those negative energies. And yeah, we'll see you over at the next video when we record May part 2, which I think we're gonna feel into May and see what comes up for us.
Yeah, most definitely. After talking about all these energies that we just spoke about, I am pretty excited to feel it in our bodies so that we're able to share more integrated practical tips. Because I mean, I do the practical tips every month that I write this down. I go back every day and be like, oh, what's going on right now? And then read the practical tip that I have written for myself and try to do it myself. Because I mean, if we're giving you these practical tips and we're not doing them, are they even really practical tips and do they even really work? And so, or like we're letting you know that as we give you these things and this information and everything that we do, we sit with it, we experience it, we do the work as well. And so as you're doing the work, come share on Discord. There is a channel just for practical cosmic magic. If you have no idea what we're talking about, come ask. If you don't know where Aries or Pisces are in your chart, come ask. If you just want someone to talk to, come ask. I'm on Discord a lot in the afternoons because I'm doing a bunch of NFT work. So you'll find me there. I'll be happy to chat and say what's up. And we're always happy to share more about the astrology, as you already know. So yeah, thank you for being with us. If you see this before the 2nd of May, we have our next moon circle on the 2nd of May. So we'll either see you there or at the next video. Thank you for being with us, and we appreciate you so much. I appreciate you so much, Thea. Thank you for being here with me and just allowing the space where we just get to talk about the cosmos.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you for part 2. Until then, walk in love.